Documentarians, particularly those belonging to marginalized identities, are often purveyors of justice, operating within systems of injustice.
To go deeper into questions related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, actually, we have offered Opal H. Bennett, co-producer and shorts producer at American Documentary POV, to give a closing keynote today, and she accepted, which we are very pleased with. Opal today is going to invite us to actually reimagine the discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for us, it means a lot to be ending this dog day with this discussion and keynote given by Opal. Please welcome Opal H. Bennett on stage. There you go, you're very welcome.
Hey everybody, how are you? I said, how you doing? Talk back to me. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much, Pierre-Alexis and the Can Stocks team for inviting me to this wonderful convening. So I'd been to Nice before, but never to Cannes, and I am loving this lush, warm, ocean-viewed style of festivaling. I'm used to freezing on a mountaintop, so this is my speed. Either way, it's the enriching film community, I think, that festivals offer that keeps us coming back year after year, and it's community that I'd like to talk about today. So when Pierre-Alexis asked if I would come speak to you today, we discussed diversity and equity and inclusion initiatives which have been gaining visibility in the United States. And we also talked about how there's been a different response to those issues, both in France specifically and in Europe more broadly. So as I sat with the idea of the topic and the conversation that I wanted to have today, I was looking to find a perspective where we would be in alignment from the different places where we stand as industry. And I came upon the cover of, am I standing too close? I feel like I'm giving you feedback. Okay. I came upon the cover of the latest nonprofit quarterly, which is a publication that provides research-based articles and resources to the nonprofit sector. And their most recent issue asks the question, how do we move beyond equity? And I want to spend a moment to unpack a bit of what that question is grappling with and what it suggests. How can we move beyond equity? There's a historic tension between the work of documentary filmmaking, which often is disruptive and challenging norms, and the documentary industry, which has often perpetuated existing structures of inequality and exclusion that exist in society at large. Documentarians, particularly those belonging to marginalized identities, are often purveyors of justice, operating within systems of injustice. Scholar Sahar Driver, who also works with Firelight Media and is one of the founders of Color of Change, she was commissioned by the Ford Foundation to undertake research surveying 200 different independent nonfiction film organizations, and she found the following, and I quote, "Individuals of color and those intersected with gender, class, and disability are too often not the authors or decision makers of films that tell the story of their communities. They are excluded from the full participation in social justice storytelling and too often do not benefit directly from its transformative potential." So this is the state of an industry so close to the work of seeking social change in a country that ostensibly maintains heightened consciousness around issues of racial, social, and gender inequality. For the past 60 years, civil rights and social justice have been addressed by government and social institutions alike in the United States, and yet our documentary industry remains entrenched in the same set of social challenges it seeks to undo. Maybe it is time, indeed, to change the conversation and to shift our focus from the broad and societal to the specific and personal, at least to some extent, to move beyond equity. I thought about what it might look like to take on implementing that challenge in our work with filmmakers, to shift from centering the broad and complex work of defining and implementing standards of equity and to find a different North Star that might yield the results sought by equity-focused work. What might that shift look like, and who and what would we center? As someone who sits in the nonprofit space, I thought about our institutional commitment at AmDoc to be in service to filmmakers, how we have incorporated into our work the centering of their perspectives, concerns, and needs, and sought to meet them to the best of our abilities. We are human and sometimes stumble in that effort, and I'll share a story about that in a bit. And we're sometimes beholden to institutional postures at odds with the commitment. But challenges notwithstanding, when we are service-led, it has the effect of creating a space where filmmakers can feel like they're in partnership with an institution, and that we are committed to staying attuned to their specific needs and to fostering a circumstance in which both they and their art can thrive. So what does this look like in the day-to-day work? It's festivals listening to filmmaker parents who say they need childcare support to participate. It's distributors having the conversation with documentarians about their preferred positioning of the story and of their participants in public discourse. And it's a public television series offering their filmmaker a space on the series website to call them out publicly when they are forced to impose an identity on that filmmaker's physical person, which they themselves do not agree. This is the story of our stumble. So I wanted to show you this letter, but if you go to the POV website and look for the film Integrate Me, it's integrate.me. It's made by Tristan and Jerry, and you'll find the filmmaker's letter that I'm talking about. So last year, we broadcast a short film called Integrate Me, made by a trans filmmaker who identifies as male. It's important to note that the filmmaker has undergone top surgery, so his chest appears as a cisgendered male. In the course of PBS's editorial standards review of the film, it was decided that a swimming scene which showed the bare chest of our filmmaker would have to be blurred to remove any possible threat of FCC violation. And so the FCC is the Federal Communications Commission. They're the regulatory body in the US that oversees all of our communications and media. So were we to have broadcast this trans filmmaker's body post-top surgery, which again, save for the scars, which someone could have as a cis-born male, chest looks like a male person, because of the regulations currently in place, PBS required that we had to blur the top portion of his body. And I should note that this is a standard that PBS itself doesn't even agree with, right? But they have to enforce the law as it is, not as they wish it were. So, as a direct result of our involvement, seeking to give platform to this story that was told so bravely, this filmmaker was subjected to harm. It was an incredibly difficult few days of seeking to hold space for him and being supportive while needing to toe the line for our broadcasting partner, PBS. It was, of course, a worse time for our filmmaker, who was forced to deal with the same kind of harm he was seeking to overcome in his film. We did all we could to hear his concerns and to advocate on his behalf. And in the end, the letter that you can look up and see was an effort to mitigate for the damage done and to let him know that even though our involvement opened the door to this harm, that we still had his back. And we also wanted to ensure that there was an evergreen space on our site for his voice to be heard. So I shared a stumble. I'll also share an example of having to pivot in the process of seeking to address a need because our community told us, in your effort to be of assistance, you're actually causing harm. And we heard them. So we have a group in AmDoc whose focus is on engagement and impact. It's POV Engage, and it's led by my brilliant colleague, Asad Muhammad. Asad had been working on an initiative to respond to documentary filmmakers' widespread calls for mental health support in doing the work that requires sustained exposure to difficult experiences, individuals, and circumstances, work which has taken a toll on their emotional wellness. This effort was particularly focused on filmmakers of color who were disproportionately vulnerable to work and health risks during the COVID-19 pandemic. Asad heard a need in our community and went about the business of seeking to address it within the scope of his available resources. He was able to recruit sponsors to provide the necessary funds and implemented a protocol along with support from an advisory board of mental health practitioners and filmmakers. So he did his due diligence, right? Called in the necessary guns, sought out filmmakers. Despite all of that, within a week of the fund's launch, AmDoc began receiving some pushback about the process, specifically about the propriety of disclosing some of the personal health information that was requested in the submission form. And fundamentally, about being asked, filmmakers who were seeking the assistance being asked to demonstrate need for mental health support versus just being believed when the need for help was expressed. Now, Asad could have pressed forward and said, hey, I'm doing a good thing, and the action that I'm doing here is self-affirming, and you don't have to be happy in the way that I'm doing it, right? But that wouldn't have been a service-led approach. Instead, leadership and Engage leaned into this moment of learning while under public scrutiny and announced publicly that the fund was being paused to, quote, reassess the pilot, the application language, and the funding process. And this is also on the AmDoc page. You can see both the original press release as well as this public pause that took place. Asad was then able to seek the input of artist organizations which already sat at the critical juncture of community and resource providing. And together, they were able to come up with an approach that both met filmmakers' needs and took their feedback into account. In the end, every single applicant that applied for assistance before the fund was paused got 100% of the monies that they requested, and the leftover funds were given to a new filmmaker-led organization focused on mental health in the documentary industry called Documentality. So Asad, wanted me to note that when you're faced with the circumstance of having your efforts, be publicly called out, institutions should lean into the opportunity to demonstrate how they're correcting course publicly in the same way that they lean into opportunities to trumpet their good things that happen. Because showing institutional learning and showing the ability to take in criticism and be led, again, is in this vein of being of service to filmmakers. So as I wrap up, I want to leave you with what I hope will be an encouraging thought, and that is, as an industry, we're all in community. Funders, commissioners, distributors, broadcasters, directors, producers, and yes, even protagonists. The documentary industry is an ecosystem, perhaps even more so than our brethren on the narrative side of things, because the art is so closely tied to the work of social impact. From topics in the environment to discrimination, the work seeks to say something and to affect change. What affects one affects us all, and making an industry-wide commitment to service ensures that we center the perspectives and the needs of those who are most vulnerable in our community, and that we shore up a sustainable space for us all. Thank you guys so much.